Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. So today's webinar is about scaling affiliates without burning your brand. So my name is Rachel Side, and I'm Head of Affiliates and Partner Marketing at Genie Goals. We have a jam-packed schedule with an amazing set of speakers today, ending with a brilliant fireside chat with Gary Ingram, co-founder of the Diamond Store. So without further ado, I am going to be kicking off our first panel on brand protection and how do you scale without losing control. So this panel is focused on a really real challenge, that many brands face in terms of keeping on top of compliance without losing the ability to test and optimize. This can often link into like legacy partnerships where volume has grown unchecked, or purely and simply that there has not been time to kind of tackle it because it takes time. We have an amazing panel here that are going to be joining me on screen now. So we've got Andy, the co-founder of Marcode, Fidelis, affiliate lead at Hughes Electricals, and Susan, affiliate lead from Boots UK. So welcome all. So I know that from our earlier panel briefing, we probably could talk about this for absolutely hours, and we only have about 15 minutes. So I think, we're going to just go straight in and take this from the start. So why I really want to begin with this one is hopefully yourselves, Fidelis and Susan, because there's two brands who are running large affiliate programs. You're going to have come across compliance and you're going to have come across tackling this. So whereabouts are you guys kind of in your journey and how are you managing and treating compliance within your partner base at the moment?
Happy to go first.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think being such a big brand is really difficult. It'd be impossible to cover everything. However, we have started tackling it. So to be honest, our journey probably started when we started in-housing in 2023. And when it's your own brand and you work for that brand and you kind of know the ins and outs of what you do and don't want to cover, it's a little bit easier for us to know what to look for. So we probably started it a little bit there, and then it was a case of what do we not know, and that's when we started to work with Marcode, and that's when we probably properly started the journey, and we started to find everything that we didn't know, and then we also knew what we did want to cover in terms of looking at the compliancy of the affiliates that we didn't have. But yeah, we do have so many affiliates, so we're taking it on like a case by case basis. So I'd say we're probably quite near the start of the journey, maybe
Yeah.
quite a few steps in, but nowhere near the end.
Yeah, I guess it's quite a good point that Beats program's been live for a while and that you're still at kind of the start of that journey because it's probably one of those journeys that's continuous as well, isn't it?
It'll never end. It's like it's not a tick box saying it's going to be done. I think there's always going to be new affiliates that come in, and we're even learning about them as we explore the Marco dashboard and find new things. So yeah, it's going to be continuous. It's not going to be like, oh, that's done, move on to the next thing. It's going to be a new affiliate comes along and starts to be someone that we have to look into even further.
Yeah, yeah. I know Fidelis probably took more of a bit more of a radical approach to this before Christmas, didn't you? To kick it off, how you're going to tackle a bit of that within the Hughes program.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, back in just even the prologue to Christmas, back in April, we did like a program audit. So we were looking for anything that was a bit miscellaneous, anything that looked a bit weird. So like huge spikes, 50% conversion, like the red flags that you get where you're like, something needs to be investigated there,
Yeah.
something's not quite right. So we did a huge sweep, and I thought, great, we're in a great position. And then 4 days before Black Friday, having a conversation with Marco Web Games, it was brought to our attention that there was so much more going on in regards to ad hijacking, non-compliance. For us, we really honed in on our T's and C's, and we, for instance, blocked web browsers and web extensions before this whole honey thing happened. But we actually found through Marco that there were like browser extensions coming through sub networks and people just doing things in crazy ways. So for us, we had like a bit of a choice to make 4 days before Black Friday, which was, do we suspend these people off the program, or do I as affiliate manager let that revenue roll through? And then after Black Friday, after peak, do I then tackle it? Because my number's going to look great if I leave it, but I'm also um, allowing our spend as a company to increase. I'm allowing our EPC to go down. So I had to kind of deliberate between that. And I like to think I made the right choice, backed by my company. He was super understanding, and we managed to suspend those programs instantly. We saw a massive drop straight away, I think the day or two before Black Friday, but actually it rebounded very quickly in time for Black Friday. So that was a bit of a close one, but it worked out in the end.
I'm glad it worked out in the end, for one thing, because that's obviously
So
the
am I.
story we want to hear. But I think it is that real world tension there, isn't it? We're going to talk about that a bit more later, but between that idea of the numbers on the surface and how you look at how you shift that volume and how you make those decisions about as and when. I mean, I guess, Andy, for yourself, this must be the thing you come across all the time when you're talking to brands. Like, obviously, you're showcasing things that maybe aren't ideal in an ideal world for them, and then you've got that tension of how you make it a reality to change it, implement change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say like that's one of the biggest barriers to people really getting compliant programs is if they're tasked on, like what Fidelis was saying, tasked on driving a revenue number, but they don't have the support within the business or um, the desire to change it. It's much easier just to leave it running, and it becomes like a bigger and bigger problem because these partners, and you mentioned a few like legacy programs. Sometimes these partners have been around for a long time. They're a massive chunk of the revenue that's being driven. They were the ones that maybe were recommended in the early days by other people, by agencies, by networks, etc. And the programs have been optimized towards those partners. So there's more of those types of partners that have come on board. The compliant partners have been pushed to one side. They haven't been given the attention, and there's just so much existential risk in raising your hand and saying, look, there's lots of stuff wrong here. I don't think a lot of the revenue that's in the program is good revenue, and it's going to drop. And I think quite a few people just don't want to have that conversation or make that choice. And I don't necessarily blame them, because one of our clients in a former role made that choice and sort of came close to getting sacked because all they looked at was the revenue numbers being down. So it is a really tough one. I think Fidelis went in sort of hard, made a big decision. Susan's working in big in-house team where they're sharing data between each other, and it's all about the overall marketing performance. So I think you've just got to get the conditions right in order to be able to take that. Otherwise, you'll just avoid it. But kicking the can down the road isn't a sustainable strategy long term.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's gonna come under the microscope at some point, isn't it? I mean, Susan, in terms of like boots, and when you are like uncovering activity that isn't ideal, and when you're removing stuff, how's it viewed internally? Is it seen as a big win, the fact that you are removing that? Is there any kind of friction or stuff you've had to navigate in terms of that narrative to stakeholders, the narrative around revenue, or the fact that that partner's been on the program for a while potentially?
I think I'm quite fortunate that we are really supported in the business, in the channel. I know not everybody is as fortunate as that, and they have a few more difficult conversations. I think we've got a lot of trust that we are the experts within our field, within the business. Somebody who's not in affiliates isn't going to challenge us that we're doing the wrong thing. And in terms of removing, for me, I think it's always been the case of like, yeah, here's a problem and we're going to remove it, but the solution is we're going to reinvest that money somewhere else. So if we have got an affiliate who we do have to remove, who is a large revenue driver, there is money there spare. Where are we going to reinvest that? And are we then going to see similar return? Because at the end of the day, if it's not compliant, it's not actually revenue. And I think that's kind of the challenge of like, it's not supposed to be going there, and like it's not, it doesn't fit in the T's and C's. So yeah, I think very fortunate in that sense, but appreciate not everybody has that. There has been challenges where we've been like, oh, we need to pull back on that. But it's not the case of we have to do it instantly. Like, we've kind of spent a lot of time looking into what we've seen in Marcode, and it's a case of what do we tackle first, what comes next, and making like a timeline of it. If I turned around and removed it all at once, it would be a bigger issue because there'd be a bigger chunk taken out of the revenue. And I think it's a case of prioritizing and deciding what comes first, what comes next, and what comes after that. And then people also see that you've got a plan. If you don't have a plan and you're just taking it away, you'll probably panic a little bit more. So yeah.
Yeah, I really like that point about, like, you are paying that money to someone to do something that they shouldn't be doing to drive that revenue, and that is money that you could invest in something else. So is that something you recognise, Fidelis, that idea of, like, yes, we're losing that volume, but that can be reinvested really easily to do the stuff we really want to do within the program?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm also really fortunate working with Hughes because even though we are channel managers and we each have the channel that we look after, we work as a unit. So we're more willing to look at that short-term loss within our specific channels if there's going to be a long-term gain over the rest of them. So for me, we're perfectly happy with that. We understand, okay, not just our position in it, but okay, what's the whole and how we helping the whole move along. So it's a little bit easier that way. I'm not being kind of called in and said, okay, like, Fidelis, what's going on with revenue? It's just, okay, this is the part affiliate plays. And if they know, for instance, I've gone through compliance, I've removed some partners or whatever it may be, we might see that drop, but we will actually see it elsewhere. And it actually makes us more profitable. So there's a better understanding of that within the company. And everyone knows that the health of the company comes first. So pretty fortunate.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that is really important sometimes when we talk about this compliance world is we're talking a lot about, like, the kind of channel, and you're referencing a lot, like, the wider business. I guess one thing you probably will see a lot, Andy, is like that impact that some of this stuff can have on other channels, and that friction that some of the compliance in the affiliate channel can cause other channels, that I guess can cause the microscope to come down onto things that are going on.
Yeah, like I would say, for sure, ad hijacking is one of the most commonly known areas of non-compliance, and I think one of the reasons it's most commonly known is you can sometimes spot it manually, and if a paid search team or a CMO spots it manually, that everything hits the fan, and then they click through and there's an affiliate link on there, and they're wondering why it was like this is happening. So that's definitely can be a trigger, is when other channels get involved and spot something going on, or when there's like an external thing, like, the honey saga that's been gone on has triggered people to ask, well, what's going on with browser extensions. But I think both Fidelis and Susan have talked about the way in which they can communicate internally and say, this revenue is not driving incremental benefit for the business. We can put it somewhere else that will drive that. I think if you are able to have those conversations, or the team can have those conversations internally, everything will be fine. Because even if someone spots something, say, oh yeah, we didn't know about that, we'll remove it, we'll reinvest it elsewhere. Your PPC costs are going to come down, your performance is going to look better, everybody's going to be happy. The problems come when you can't have those conversations because everyone is working super siloed, and no one talks to each other. And to an extent, it's the senior leadership who need to be driving this thing because they have oversight over all the budgets and they're the ones who set targets. And if that stuff isn't in place, that's when the conversations become much, much harder, and you get channel infighting a bit.
Yeah, no one wants that, do they? No one wants that
No.
email on the Monday morning. What's gone on?
No.
Unbelievably, 15 minutes has flown, but I still want to do the last question type summary. Is so, if you're sitting here and, like, to the affiliate manager who's maybe currently ignoring that suspicious revenue, or they just don't want to highlight that they've got bad practice going on, or, to be honest, they just don't really have the time to start with it, is there, like, one thing that you would say they should start doing tomorrow or start digging into to kind of begin that process of, like, I guess, looking behind the curtain, seeing what's going on, and, like, your advice really to getting going? To everyone, actually. I don't know who wants to go first.
I'll just repeat what Fidelis and Susan said. So Fidelis said, look for the stuff where there's spikes, where the conversion rates look too good. If something's too good to be true, it's going to be too good to be true. And at some point, like, it's unlikely that that will remain hidden forever. So you need to make a plan for it. And then what Susan said, make a plan and start communicating that plan, start talking about it internally, educating people and say, look, I have some concerns about compliance here. It's not driving incremental revenue. We'll do something that is, and start communicating that basically, and get started now.
Yeah, don't pretend it doesn't exist. I think, like, I always tell my team, like, where did it come from? If you can't tell me where it came from, then that's when we need to really look into it properly. If that spike happened and you think it's because of this, but what is the actual source of truth of that? But yeah, I highly recommend the plan, because in no way could I turn around and turn off every non-compliant thing right this instant. That would not be a good thing to do. That's why we've got a plan in place. And yeah, I think also, to Andy's point about working with other teams, I think we've actually been very fortunate that we've been able to utilize things that we found in Marcode to help our other teams. So even if they've not asked about it, if you're like sharing, like, we have this insight, we have this view, they feel a bit more confident in you that you're all over it. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that, just have the hard conversations, right? Because the more you kind of sweep it under the carpet, the worse it's going to get on the other end. So just get used to having the hard conversations quickly and efficiently. And kind of to the point about Marcode, which Susan mentioned, I think something that's really helped me is actually being able to have the evidence of it, because these things are kind of hard to find yourself. As an affiliate manager, there's all these sneaky ways in which publishers go about it sometimes. So Marcode actually giving you the evidence, the links, and what's actually being done kind of helps build your case. And it makes those tough conversations a little easier as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That is actually all we've got time for on compliance. So just a massive thank you to Andy, Fidelis and Susan for sharing your experience. And I think also for me, just being like pretty open about the journey and the fact that it's kind of an ongoing process and it's not one of those things that you tick a box and go compliance solved. You've got to keep working at it and you've got to keep on top of it. So up next, you're going to have a break from me talking for a little bit as I hand over to a real life PPC expert, our very own head of search, Jérémy, to tell you how a PPC person really thinks about affiliate CSS, and also Graham, our wonderful client services director in affiliates, to explain why we believe working with CSS is worth persevering with and worth getting that conversation over the line.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I feel like we could we could talk about it for hours, just like compliance, but let's try to stick to the 10 minutes, but happy to talk about CSS with anyone afterwards as well. So how do you get your PPC team, my team, to say yes to Graham and the affiliate side when it comes to CSS? First of all, I think there's a couple, let's take a step back, I think. So when we talk about CSS, so that stands for effectively comparison shopping services. So that's the platform that will enable you to advertise your products on shopping, on the Google Shopping carousel, both in the UK and the EU. Now, when we're talking about CSS, there are two components effectively. The first one, that's called self-managed CSS, and that's the type of activity that me and my team run for retailers, e-commerce brands out there. And so that's the type of activity that you can run in-house or freelancers, anyone else. But that's your own main Google Ads shopping activity. And then you've got the affiliate CSS activity, which is often, we kind of mention as kind of a CPA model, because that's how it works. So as a brand, you only pay when you make a sale. And that's the type of activity that you, Graham, and your team are running.
Yeah, and for us, there's a lot we can work with when we try and sell in affiliate CSS to clients. Firstly, CPA model, like the majority of affiliate activity, means you're only paying for valid sales. So you've got none of that risk of accidental overspend without the sales there to back it up. And it takes away a lot of that risk you get with CPC models. Another benefit is the extra coverage in shopping carousels. Having an extra slot means extra real estate, more visibility, and a lesser chance of a competitor getting that click or sale. And without doubt, the best part of both affiliate CSS and PPC CSS is the rebate. As they were when CSS first started, all CSS ads benefit from a 20% rebate. It makes having CSS in some capacity basically a no-brainer. We know it benefits brands without driving up CPCs. Google has handily provided different scenarios involving CSS to demonstrate how it can helpfully complement your activity, running both PPC CSS and affiliate CSS.
Yeah, I feel like we need to shout about the 20% discount for the people at the back, just to make sure everyone heard that. Is I know we talked about too good to be true, but it is very good and it is true because of how Google will actually take that 20% cut before a bid actually goes into the auction. But talking about CSSs, I guess, and from your experience, I feel like a lot of brands don't want to run on CSS like any kind of CSS on a CPA model with the affiliate publisher. So how do you kind of approach that, and what some sort of the pushback that you guys get as a team?
We there's a lot of things we get pushback on that basically center around their own Google shopping activity for the most part, and how the two interact with one another. What we kind of hear from brands is things like that they're doing their own shopping. They don't need any more to kind of complement that or exist alongside it. How do you kind of approach those kind of questions when you get pushback like that?
Yeah, I think, we, at the end of the day, we work for a brand. We know, we're not selfish going to be like, no, we just want to drive the revenue that we can drive through our own channel. At the end of the day, it's about incrementality and making sure that we can drive that extra growth for the retailers that we work with. So it's fine if you're just running with your own activity, but I feel like you're missing kind of an opportunity here to grow your base. So in a world where CPCs are rising, I don't know if anyone's on this webinar, but if anyone's seen like any drop in CPCs, please drop me a note, because I haven't seen any kind of retailers, any industry seeing any drops on CPCs on Google. It's becoming a lot more competitive year after year. So you've got all of these external factors that you don't have any kind of control over. And the reality of the auction is that your own activity cannot win every single slot. So even though you might appear for a specific search query on shopping, you might not actually be able to kind of own every single slot on shopping. So I think that's what Rob, our head of the Genie Shopping Network, would say. That's the gap that creates the opportunity. That's the gap that we can fill with a CSS. So again, like you said, having multiple effectively storefront and multiple tiles for the same retailer at the end of the day is what really matters, because that's all about that incrementality.
Yeah, definitely. I think another thing we get is brands have a lot of concern about impact on their own CPCs, again going back to their own Google shopping activity. How would you alleviate concerns that a brand might have that it's going to inflate their CPCs?
Yeah, I think that's a normal concern, because again, CPCs are increasing all the time. So you just want to make sure you're not doing anything that would inflate our own activity. But I'm actually going to read literally a sentence from Google's guidelines, literally their guidelines that anyone got access to, which says that if two CSSs place bids on behalf of the same merchant, so that's what we're talking about here, so our own activity, your activity for one single merchant, the winning offer and the price paid by the winning CSS will be the same as if those bids had been placed by the same CSS. So all of that to say that whether you place the ad through your own activity, a CSS provider as well, at the end of the day, the CPC won't be inflated, because Google knows that at the end of the day, that's the same merchant. So that's typically what we go back with, and hopefully, if you just show this is what Google is saying, and black and white, hopefully that kind of that helps these conversations.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you say to brands when they have concerns that the CSS ads might appear ahead of their own?
They do. Sometimes they do, especially if you've got CEO, CMO like checking, and then they say that this is not necessarily their own activity. It's always an interesting conversation. But I think at the end of the day, that's kind of how the auction works as well. And the first point of call would be to be looking at your own activity might be limited by budget, or it might actually most likely be your bidding strategy, the type of target return on ad spend that you've got set up for your performance max campaign. And the algorithm, based on historical data, based on the search query and everything that it knows about that search behavior, might have decided that actually that specific search query is not relevant for you to place an ad in front of. So just because the CSS is showing an ad doesn't actually mean that you would have shown instead. And I think that's what we need to understand, is just plug in the gaps where you're not showing in the first place, as opposed to it's replacing your own activity. So it's just making sure we're monitoring this, but that's kind of how we would approach it.
Right. Yeah. And then for us, about the way we're kind of running it from that affiliate side, it is mostly about retailers for now. Like CSS is really dominant by retail, but we know that like subscription and like travel brands, that area is starting to grow, and potentially there's going to be some changes on Google Shopping that are going to affect that as well. But we've done within retail, we've done CSS campaigns with fashion brands, electricals brands, home brands, amongst others. We do have those challenges when we sell it in, like we discussed, but most are happy once they start to see the results. And we do work with a variety of different affiliate CSS publishers as well, for a few different reasons. We do work with our sister brand, Genie Shopping, on CSS campaigns, but we work with other CSSs alongside them. It's just because some CSSs are more catered to like emerging SME brands, whereas others are more catered to larger developed brands. So a lot of the time that decision's just made based on the size of the brand. If they're going into CSS for the first time, etc., we might choose to work with a CSS that's more catered towards that emerging market. We do have campaigns live with multiple affiliate CSSs live at the same time too. We really just found that to be a case of kind of just testing and learning. There's usually a sweet spot between 2 and 3 different CSSs live. I think our advice would just be to monitor and assess the impact if you decide to run multiple. When multiple are live, we tend to look at the overall shopping revenue, including affiliate CSS, both of those revenues combined, rather than just affiliate CSS in isolation. We really need that like holistic view to understand whether or not it's working. We find that CSS can work both as a tool to focus on specific SKUs or something that goes after volume. Again, it's kind of just a case of like testing and learning and finding out whatever's like the best fit for your brand.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And actually, some of those points are going to feature in my checklist, because I kind of wanted to leave the conversation with, any retail brands out there considering running with CSSs. I think is from our side, the way we approach this is making sure we've got a checklist, so it's not just a free for all, and then we have no idea what's going on. I've got 5 points. The first one is to set clear boundaries. So you talked about product SKUs, specific SKUs or product categories. I think what we need to make sure is that whatever cost of sale you're running on the CSS activity needs to be much lower than what you've got with your own campaigns, with your own shopping activity, because otherwise they're just going to show ultimately all the time. So as long as they're below that cost of sale, then it makes total sense. And if you've got a cost of sale across multiple categories, then you've got a breakdown in cost of sales, then just make sure that that's kind of reflected with the CSS as well. Then the second point is negative keywords. So we're talking about incrementality here. So we want to make sure that the CSS is not appearing for any kind of branded exact term. So we had the likes of Hughes, Diamond Store, Vix today. So I think running CSS activity, we just want to make sure that anyone searching for those specific keywords, that traffic and those conversions are being swept by your own kind of activity, because ultimately it's a lot cheaper than doing that through your own activity. Then reporting, I think you want to know what's going on, what they're doing, and I think it's quite handy to kind of make sure you get at least like a monthly or even a quarterly report in terms of the data they're seeing, how many the traffic they're driving, the product SKUs, etc. So you can kind of cross-reference that with your own PPC activity and your PPC team. Number 4, trial period. So make sure that all your teams know when that's happening, I would say. So, you know, when we agree to run CSS activity, we just want to know when is that going to go live, so we can keep an eye on our own reporting, our own Google Shopping activity, just to make sure that nothing is gonna swing either way. So just make sure you know when that's going on, and make sure that you go 4 to 6 week trial in place, and then review that at the end. Because again, at the end of the day, it's about incrementality, making sure you're driving more revenue for the brand as a whole, not just for one specific channel. And then lastly, I think you mentioned it, is to stick with only a couple of CSSs, 2 or 3 realistically, because you can run with so many. But I think you want to make sure you align with the CSSs, those that are within your vertical, they understand your industry, so you can get some benchmarks, etc. You want to know what's going on, so you don't want to let like 15 CSS just run free and just do whatever you want with it, with your feeds. Yeah, I would say usually would work with 2 or 3 max for some of the brands that we work with. So this is kind of my checklist for me and the team when we work with Ugram or any other kind of CSS platforms. With that, happy to carry on the conversation afterwards. But for now, I think that's it on CSS, and then I will hand it back to Rachel. Here you go, Rachel.
Thank you so much for that, Jérémy and Graham. Hope that's given everyone a bit of a balanced view on broaching CSS or helping get that sign off. And we're running a little behind schedule, so I'm going to dive straight in to a session on the future of content partnerships. We've got 2 exceptional panelists. We've got Mina Kitsos from Partnerships Director at Linkby, and Ray Wright, co-founder at UFurnish, joining us. Hello both. Hello. This is going to turn into a bit of a lightning round, guys, so I hope that you are ready with timers. So we're just going to go straight in then. So we are like a couple of months into 2026 now, and I'd love to know, is there like any recurring questions you're getting from brands right now regarding awareness activity, upper funnel opportunities, and how they can feature in editorial?
Yeah, 100%. So Rachel, I think the first one is, what is AI visibility? And the second part of that is, how do I get a piece of the action? And something that we've been seeing is that we know this is such an important question, as AI visibility is the new discovery channel. So large language models like ChatGPT, Perplexity, they are now mainstream. They're not niche or experimental. And when you look at the figures of how many people are using these, they're staggering. It's like 800 million people are using ChatGPT a week. And in terms of trends, like we have 80% of shoppers are using AI at some point of the purchase journey. So yeah, it's a really great time to be thinking about this and working out how you can best set yourself up for success.
Yeah, I think it's got to be any question the same we're getting is like, how do we feature in LLM results or AI reviews? How about you, Ray? What are you seeing from UFurnish's side?
Sort of following on from what Mina said there, like it's absolutely that. Like last year, we saw a 500% increase in the amount of traffic that we got to our own site coming through LLMs, and it's sort of fascinating because it all comes from, as everybody is probably aware, people asking questions, prompts, all that kind of stuff. But it also comes from like how you foundationally set up to index in those areas. So there's been, from our end, there's been a lot of preparation to get ready for that. So, and that is now starting to transpose into results. And then that's what we're seeing also come from the brands that we work with. They're sort of asking questions about how are we doing it, how do we approach it together? Because everyone wants to incrementally grow. But I think the challenge is everyone's a little bit scared about where they should put their eggs as well.
Yeah, I really like that you touched on that foundation piece, because I know this is something we talked a bit about when we met, is that idea of like Well, I feel like there's this idea of like you can just turn the switch on, or you can just maybe like do a bit here and a bit there, and that's going to make an impact. I mean, what is the reality of how you make this a strategy for you? How make yourself, your brand, appear in more of these results? What is the strategy behind that, and what should brands really actually focus on?
So it's not a flash in the pan action that a brand can really take. It's something that needs to be consistent and ongoing. And what we know is that LLMs, these large language models, are what they eat, and what they eat is trusted content on scale. And they use really specific signals when they're working out what sources to cite. EEAT, these are things to remember. Expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And so a lot of third-party commentary, so looking at like full-length dedicated editorials, third-party validation, those are the things that these large language models are looking for when deciding what to recommend. It's worth noting, like we are having brands ask this question, and like one example of a brand that we've worked with at Linkby, Elta-MD, they're a sunscreen brand, and they wanted to be the sunscreen brand that come up when people are Googling best sunscreens, or searching best sunscreens to buy.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting, like versus traditional search, like Google, as I mentioned, when you're going to LLMs, they are pulling from a really wide range of sources. And now we've actually been able to see that content we've secured for brands like Elta-MD, for example, is being cited, and is one of the reasons why currently Elta-MD is ranked top sunscreen when you search. And that is something that's dynamic, but something that they as a brand are trying to continue and maintain that position. So yeah, as you said, Rachel, it is an ongoing process. There's recency bias with large language models, so we know this as well. And having that consistency of coverage on those trusted titles, it's what's key to appearing and having that share of voice.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is like some of the fundamentals of this are actually based in the fundamentals of best practice for brands anyway, isn't it? It's like that idea of like really good structured site and SEO and making sure your brand's front of mind and digital PR. I guess for you, Ray, I know that you have done a lot of this for your own brand, for UFurnish brand, to kind of build that brand equity online as well.
Absolutely. Like, probably to build on Mina's point, what was key for us before we started to do any of this digital PR work and any of that sort of thing, which we do a lot of, is actually making sure that foundationally the technology or the technical setup behind what we do was correct. So if you lean into EEAT and then you start to think about, how is a search engine going to index your site? They're looking at page speed performance, time to first byte, all these key core metrics. So essentially what you need to be focused on is the performance there, and then how you can give the right signals and technical maps to, a search engine to be able to search your site, and then how you mirror that across into an LLM so that you're also giving the LLM those similar signals. Because if it can't navigate its way through and easily find things, then it's likely it's not going to reference you. If your site isn't performant, again, it's going to look at it and say, well, that's likely to let someone down. So that the fundamentals are there. And I think there's a real risk around, if you don't do the foundational stuff, you'll then go into the broader stuff around, working with third parties and trying to drive visibility and credibility, but it will maybe fall down within your strategy because you didn't do the foundational stuff first. So I'd always encourage anyone to do that and then lean into the broader stuff to really make it pay back.
Yeah, and I think a big thing that underpins loads of what we're talking about today, and I think certainly when we are talking about all this optimization, all the different things you can be doing, is one thing for me is I'm always like kind of wanted to ask people, like, are you actually seeing things like a traffic decline? How are we going to actually measure some of this stuff in the long term? Because there's two sides of the measurement, isn't there? There's the idea of like how you as a brand can be super confident in your investment, but also how can we make sure we're rewarding properly to publishers we might be working with. Do you guys have any view on how this is shifting or changing?
Yeah, 100%. I think the first thing to acknowledge is there has been a huge behavioural shift, but it's something that's quite exciting to witness. With the traffic that is coming through AI Viz, there's 9 times higher purchase intent than with traditional search. people are using it in a very different way than traditional search. They're using it to not only ask a question, but to compare, contrast, and often make the final decision as well. So it's never been more critical to be there at those first stages of the purchase journey. That being said, when it comes to AI, there are shifts towards tracking like share of AI voice, citation frequency. Also, like we're now able to, with some of the LLMs, look at the exact sources and the articles that they're citing. Like that might be the list type content they're citing or which dedicated pieces are being pulled out. For example, with L2MD, we could see that the page 6 content was seen as like a trusted source by ChatGPT. So that's really something to take note of as we continue to see, the use of LLMs grow.
Yep, absolutely.
Maybe just on that point, Rachel, as well, and I think it's a really good point for Mina. Like we were this morning, we were assessing a new tool that would help us really look at how we gauge and benchmark LLMs. And it was really interesting. We were digging into some of the trial data, and it was actually referencing if you were returned within a query or a prompt that was placed into an LLM, what was the reference point in which your business was returned? And it permeated between content sites, high value content sites, and even into social media to say the LLM took its reference point from this social media reference to your brand, which is why it returned you for this particular query. It's like super fascinating how detailed it actually is, but that's all the stuff that people need to consider.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point to make, that it is pulling from way more places than you actually realise and taking way more signals from social channels than you think. Just because of time, I've just got one last really quick fire question. If you could leave a brand who was watching today with like one quick tip of something they could start doing or thinking about, what would you guys both suggest?
I'd build on Ray's point of, first like start obviously brand side, and once you have that all set up, start focusing on improving your share of voice, like looking at what prompts will related to your category. For example, if you're a beauty brand, looking at the prompts that people searching beauty brands would typically use, and looking at the competitors maybe that are already cited there to kind of set a goal of where you want to be seen. And from there, that's where you can kind of create a content strategy around that.
Absolutely. I think the key word is strategy. The thing I would encourage any brand to do is build for where you want to be in 24 to 36 months, not where someone wants you to be in 3 months, because you'll end up making the wrong decisions and your business won't benefit from it. So you've got to be a little bit brave and lean in, and you'll get the outcome that you want.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you so much for giving me very succinct answers and allowing us to cram just as much in as that we'd hoped when we were chatting. That's all the time we have for content. So a massive thank you to Mina and Ray. It's such an evolving and ever-changing area. It's kind of impossible to have every answer. But I'm going to move straight into our final piece of today's webinar. So last but not least, I'm delighted to welcome Gary Ingram, co-founder of the Diamond Store. Gary's going to talk to me very much about the Diamond Store's journey in building the affiliate channel, and how they actually view the channel, how they could use the channel moving forwards, and how it sits within the Diamond Store's plan.
Hi Rachel, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Would you like to give a quick intro to the Diamond Store before we go into the questions?
Sure. I founded the Diamond Store around 20 years ago. We're currently the largest online jeweller in the UK. Most of the products we sell are for landmark special occasions, engagements, anniversaries, that kind of thing.
Amazing. Thank you. So if we go into affiliates, so we know we love talking affiliates, don't we? It's like one of your favourite channels now, possibly?
I'll tell you after 2026.
I thought I was going to get you on record then. So you initially launched the affiliate channel for the Diamond Store back in Q4 2024. So we have a lot of brands that sometimes a bit more premium brands have a fear of launching affiliates, wondering what that kind of publisher mix and what that experience would like. What were your kind of initial hopes for the channel, and why did you decide that was kind of the right time for you guys to launch?
We'd actually had affiliates a couple of times, but like 10 years before. It was a very different landscape then, the way that affiliate marketing worked back then. It burnt by it. However, we knew it was a channel that we had to, at some point, we had to sort of embrace it rather than fight it. So we decided to look, it was something 24, but we kept it in. And we just thought we'd have I think we got to about Christmas and we realised we were a little bit out of our depth and we started us to manage or went wider on embracing it and getting on it for us. We channels tested it and then we thought we got to do it properly.
Amazing. I think that's one of the key things is that sometimes it does end up being that first channel that becomes a bit of a test, and then like you either run with that test or you decide, oh, maybe this test wasn't right for us. And I know you launched in that Q4, and then we started working together around the March time. And I think one of the kind of that first things we did take the big and bold strategy. We talked compliance earlier on the panel with Fidelis and Susan, and you had about 80% voucher sites at the time. And you don't really do voucher codes or things like that on the site. So we made a pretty big move to remove those partners. What was going through your mind when we thought about doing that? Were you excited about the reset, scared about the loss of revenue?
No, because I felt that a lot of the revenue was parasitical. So in other words, just before people were buying, they were going and finding and choosing us to buy through a used clothes, whatever. So I was actually excited. I was relieved that we were taking. We knew that wasn't the way to run the program for us, for the way.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to take through this, is that idea of like thinking about what you're doing in the channel and linking it very much to you as a brand, and thinking about what you are doing as a brand, and actually what content you're putting out there. Where, you know, if you're not a brand that offers continuous codes on your own site, it becomes a little bit of a mismatch, doesn't it, when the only partners that are driving are those code partners. I think a big part of how we reshifted, and you look to reshift, was this idea of looking at those closed user groups and those closed audiences, and that became like a really big part of how we moved forward. What is the appeal of those kind of partners for a brand like yours when you're looking to scale?
For me, what our hope is that people go and retailers that are represented in those user groups, AI group, say Amex or whatever, or that they're just job or occupation. And we know that our customers have to be where they are. And that was of reaching our customers and open vouchers. Open vouchers is just taking our money. So, and it has actually been really the closed user groups. And I think we talked about it. I'll expand on go with that.
Yeah, I think it is definitely that idea. I mean, your sound is just cutting out occasionally a little bit, but I know that what we chatted about, so I'm just going to but I know it was that idea of like being able to reach your consumers wherever they are. And one thing that I really liked about the way you kind of look at a lot of your partners and your partnerships is that acceptance, that there is sometimes that consumer that does need that like little touch point and that little thing, I guess, to get them over that line and that final point. And it's what partners you can engage with and work with to enable you to do that. So, you know, you have to accept sometimes that as a brand that a consumer does need it, don't they? They do need the cash back, or they do need the rate.
Yeah, there's two bits to that actually. One is, and I'm sorry if my sound right now, but I think there's two things. One is to set the cashback amount just enough that is interesting for whatever product you're selling, but also enough that it doesn't hurt your brand. In fact, giving some of that money away, and your margin is affected.
Yeah. 100%. One thing I'd love to talk about is we had quite a good section on CSS today. Now you are overseeing all the channels. You guys do huge amounts in your own PPC. We've introduced CSS for you guys in Q4, just before peak season. How do you view CSS? Like, it doesn't have to be like the perfect answer. It's an evolving view, I guess. But how do you view it when you're looking at both channels side by side?
I think Jérémy and I can't remember the other guy's name. I think they covered it really well. But we were skeptical at first because we thought, okay, hang on, we're going to be doing it with ourselves, all the things. But actually what we found was that the key to it was setting this, and Jérémy alluded to this, the key at a level that you're comfortable. And the way I viewed it was, would we pay that all day long? And if we would, why would? And then two other things. When we on CSS as a percentage wasn't that high. When we pull back the budgets, the CSS will creep up and mop up a bit of the slack, if you like. But again, as long as you lock in the CPA, what does it matter? Is my view.
Yeah, and I think that that being able to have that holistic viewpoint and actually see what happens when, you know, for whatever reason you pulled back on your own activity, and you can map those fluctuations. You can actually see how they do come in and out of the auctions, and how they do fill those gaps where you are actually actively pulling your own search out for strategic reasons or budget reasons, whatever it may be. One thing that you did quite a bold strategy in Q4 in some ways, in that we didn't invest loads in extra exposure. We kind of went with your site offer. We were like, this is what the offer is. And then we invested in things like content. So, for example, The Independent was a really big success for us. What made you think that we need to lean into that awareness more, as opposed to maybe just like doing more of the codes and more of the discounts at a time when everyone else is chasing that?
If I'm on, is that we should test everything a few times, see what happens, see what the outcome is. Don't be closed-minded not to try different things. You've got to try it and see how it works. And one of the surprising outcomes of the content was how much longer we kept getting sales from that content. I thought maybe if it went out for that first week and days, we'd fail. But actually, we look back and told us that 2 months later, we're still getting sales. 2 months later, we're still getting sales. So actually, it's worked out to be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the amazing surprise and success for us all, wasn't it? Like, just keep topping up and see like how long that goes for. And so I guess finally, if there was like a founder or a brand manager in the audience today who feels like their partner mix is wrong, or they're not getting the value they'd hoped for, is there a piece of advice you'd give them as someone who's kind of gone on that journey of like reshaping it and actually actively investing again in the channel?
Yeah, I think you've either got to really employ the very best person in the house and go wholeheartedly into affiliates and do it with gusto, or you have to go to an agency and just hand over the reins. And hand over the reins and let them, they've learned from customers they've got, and just follow the lead for the first year. Don't say no to too much. Be open and try different things to see what works for your brand.
Yeah. And I like that you ended on that point, because I like that, making that work for your brand, because it's so important that you don't forget that that's the foundations of all these partnerships, and what makes it work for these partners as well, making sure that it absolutely is brand aligned. I can't believe that we've run out of time already. We're already at 3 o'clock. Just a massive thank you for joining us and for sharing your insight, Gary. I really, really super appreciate it. And thank you so much to everyone else for joining us today. I hope you found it really useful. I've got probably like 30 seconds to do free takeaways. So I would say, takeaway 1, always know your traffic sources. It helps you invest more confidently. B, embrace things like upper funnel, look at things like CSS, and be consistent with things like content and where people are discovering you and those consumer touch points. And also ultimately do things that are right for your brand. Think about, would my consumer actually shop in this space, and is that where my customer is? We're going to send an email tomorrow. I'll have my details on it. So feel free to follow up with any questions or any information you might have to me directly. And thank you so much for joining, and apologies again for a few technical hitches right at the start.